Good morning. Welcome to the Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. After 2 years on the run, best friends Rose and half-human, half-vampire, and Lisa, mortal vampire princess, are caught and returned to St. Vladimir Academy. Up until then, Rose had kept Lisa safe from her enemies. School, however, brings both girls additional challenges and responsibilities. How they handle peer pressure, nasty gossip, new relationships, and anonymous threats may mean life or death. Likeable narrator Rose hides doubts about her friend behind a tough exterior. Orphan Lisa, while coping with difficult emotional issues such as depression and survivor's guilt, uses her emerging gifts for good. Mead's absorbing debut YA novel, the first in a new series, blends intricity, detailed fantasy with contemporary setting, teen-relevant issues, and diverse, if sometimes stereotyped, cast of supporting characters. Occasional steamy sex and scattering of vulgar language demand mature readers, but teens are able to handle the edgy elements. We'll speed through this vamp story and anticipate the next installment. Alright, here we go. Vampire Academy. Her nightmare pulsed into me, shaking me out of my own dream, which had something to do with a beach and some hot guy rubbing suntan oil on me. Images, hers, not mine, tumbled through my mind, fire and blood, the smell of smoke, the twisted metal of a car. The pictures wrapped around me, suffocating me, until some rational part of my brain reminded me that this wasn't my dream. I woke up, strands of long dark hair sticking to my forehead. Lisa lay in her bed, thrashing and screaming. I bolted out of mine, quickly crossing the few feet that separated us. "Lise," I said, shaking her. "Lise, wake up." Her screams dropped off, replaced by soft whimpers. "Andre," she moaned. "Oh, God." I helped her sit up. "Lise, you aren't there anymore. Wake up." After a few moments, her eyes fluttered open, and in the dim lighting, I could see a flicker of consciousness start to take over. Her frantic breathing slowed, and she leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. I put an arm around her and ran a hand over her hair. "It's okay," I told her gently. "Everything's okay. I had that dream." "Yeah, I know." We sat like that for several minutes, not saying anything else. When I felt her emotions calm down, I leaned over to the nightstand between our beds and turned on the lamp. It glowed dimly, but neither of us really needed much to see by. Attracted by the light, our housemate's cat, Oscar, leapt up onto the sill of the open window. He gave me a wide berth. Animals don't like dampers, for whatever reason, but jumped onto the bed and rubbed his head against Lisa. Purring softly, animals didn't have a problem with Maury, and they all loved Lisa in particular. Smiling, she scratched his chin, and I felt her calm further. "When did we last do a feeding?" I asked, studying her face. Her fair skin was paler than usual. Dark circles hung under her eyes, and there was an air of frailty about her. School had been hectic this week, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd given her blood. "It's been like more than 2 days, hasn't it?" "3." Why didn't you say anything? She shrugged and wouldn't meet my eyes. You were busy. I didn't want to. Screw that, I said, sitting into a better position. No wonder she seemed so weak. Oscar, not wanting me any closer, leapt down and returned to the window, where he could watch at a safe distance. Come on, let's do this. Rose, come on. It'll make you feel better. I tilted my head and tossed my hair back, baring my neck. I saw her hesitate, but the sight of my neck and what it offered proved too powerful. A hungry expression crossed her face, and her lips parted slightly, exposing the fangs she normally kept hidden while living among humans. Those fangs contrasted oddly with the rest of her features. With her pretty face and pale blonde hair, she looked more like an angel than a vampire. As her teeth neared my bare skin, I felt my heart race with a mix of fear and anticipation. I always hated feeling the latter, but it was nothing I could help, weakness I could shake. Her fangs bit into me hard. I cried out at the brief flare of pain. Then it faded, replaced by a wonderful golden joy that spread through my body. It was better than any of the times I'd been drunk or high, better than sex, or so I imagined, since I'd never done it. It was a blanket of pure, refined pleasure, wrapping me up, promising everything would be right in the world. On it went. The chemicals of her saliva triggered an endorphin rush and lost track of the world. Lost track of who I was. Then, regretfully, it was over. I had taken less than a minute. She pulled back, wiping her hand across her lips and saying, You okay? I, yeah. I lay back in the bed, dizzy from the blood loss. I just need to sleep it off. I'm fine. Her pale jade green eyes watched me with concern. She stood up. I'm going to get you something to eat. My protest came awkwardly to my lips. She left before I could get out a sentence. The buzz from her bite had lessened as soon as she broke the connection, but some of it still lingered in my veins, and I felt a goofy smile cross my lips. Turning my head, I glanced up at Oscar, still sitting in the window. You don't know what you're missing, I told him. His attention was something outside, hunkering down into a crouch. He puffed out his jet black fur. His tail started twitching. Ooh, what is going to happen? His smile faded, and I forced myself to sit up. The world spun, and I waited for it to right itself before trying to stand. When I managed it, the dizziness set in again, and this time refused to leave. Still, I felt okay enough to stumble to the window and peer out with Oscar. He eyed me warily, scooted over a little, and then returned to whatever had held his attention. A warm breeze, unseasonably warm for a Portland fall, played my hair as I leaned out. The street was dark and relatively quiet. It was 3 in the morning, just about the only time a college campus settled down, at least somewhat. The house in which we had rented a room for the past 8 months sat on a residential street with old mismatched houses. Across the road a streetlight flickered, nearly ready to burn out. It still cast enough light for me to make out the shapes of cars and buildings. In our own yard I could see the silhouettes of trees and bushes, and a man watching me. Ooh. I jerked back in surprise. A figure stood by the tree in the yard, about 30 feet away, where he could easily see through the window. He was close enough that I probably could have thrown something and hit him. He was certainly close enough that he could have seen what Lisa and I had just done. The shadows covered him so well that even with my heightened sight, I couldn't make out any of his features. Save for his height, he was tall, really tall. He stood there for just a moment, barely dissembled, and then stepped back, disappearing into the shadows cast by the trees on the side of the yard. I was pretty sure I saw someone else move nearby and join him before the blackness swallowed them both. Whoever these figures were, Oscar didn't like them, not counting me. He usually got along with most people, growing upset only when someone posed an immediate danger. The guy outside hadn't done anything threatening to Oscar, but the cat had said something that put him on edge, something similar to what he always sensed in me. Icy fear raced through me, almost but not quite, eradicating the lovely bliss of Lisa's bite. Backing up from the window, I jerked on a pair of jeans that I found on the floor, nearly falling over in the process. Once they were on, I grabbed my coat and Lisa's, along with our wallet, shoving my feet into the first shoes I saw, and headed out the door. Downstairs, I found her in the cramped kitchen, rummaging through the refrigerator. One of our housemates, Jeremy, sat at the table, hand on his forehead as he stared sadly at a calculus book. Lisa regarded me with surprise. "You shouldn't be up. We have to go. Now." Her eyes widened, and then a moment later, understanding clicked in. Are you sure?" I nodded. I couldn't explain how I knew for sure. I just did. Jeremy watched us curiously. "What's wrong?" And an idea came to my mind. "Lisa, get his car keys." He looked back and forth between us. "What are you?" Lisa unhesitatingly walked over to him. Her fear poured into me through our psychic bond, but there was something else too. Her complete faith that I could take care of everything, that we would be safe, like always. I hoped I was worthy of that kind of trust. She smiled broadly and gazed directly into his eyes. For a moment Jeremy just stared, still confused, and then I saw the thrall seize him. His eyes glazed over, and he regarded her adoringly. "We need to borrow your car," she said in a gentle voice. "Where are your keys?" He smiled, and I shivered. I had a high resistance to compulsion, but I could still feel its effects when it was directed at another person. And I'd been taught my entire life that using it was wrong. Reaching into his pocket, Jeremy handed over a set of keys hanging on a large red keychain. "Thank you," said Lisa. "And where is it parked?" "Down the street," he said dreamily. "At the corner by Brown, 4 blocks away." "Thank you," she repeated, backing up. "As soon as we leave, I want you to go back to studying. Forget you ever saw us tonight." He nodded obligingly. I got the impression he would have walked off a cliff to her right then if she had asked. All humans were susceptible to compulsion, but Jeremy appeared weaker than most. That came in handy right now. "Come on," I told her. "We've got to move." We stepped outside, heading toward the corner he had named. I was still dizzy from the bite and kept stumbling, unable to move as quickly as I wanted. Lisa had to catch hold of me a few times to stop me from falling. All the time that anxiety rushed into me from my mind. I tried my best to ignore it. I had my fears to deal with. Rose, what are you going to do if they catch us? She whispered. They won't, I said fiercely. I won't let them. But if they found us before. They didn't catch us then. We'll just drive over to the train station and go to L.A. They'll lose the trail. I made it sound simple. I always did, even though there was nothing simple about being on the run from the people we'd grown up with. We'd been doing it for 2 years, hiding wherever we could, and just trying to finish high school. Our senior year had just started, and living on a college campus had seemed safe. We were so close to freedom. She said nothing more. I felt her faith in me surge up once more. This was the way it had always been between us. I was the one who took action, who made sure things happened, sometimes reckless so. She was the more reasonable one, the one who thought things out and researched them extensively before acting. Both styles had their uses, but at the moment, recklessness was called for. We didn't have time to hesitate. Lisa and I had been friends ever since kindergarten, when our teacher had paired us together for writing lessons. Forcing 5-year-olds to spell Vasila Dragomir and Rosemary Hathaway were beyond cruel. And or rather I'd responded appropriately. I chucked my book at our teacher and called her a fascist bastard. I hadn't known what those words meant, but I'd known how to hit a moving target. Lisa and I had been inseparable ever since. Did you hear that? She asked suddenly. It took me a few seconds to pick up the sharper senses already had. Footsteps moving fast. I grimaced. We had 2 more blocks to go. We've got to run for it, I said, catching hold of her arm. But you can't. Run. It took every ounce of my willpower not to pass out on the sidewalk. My body didn't want to run after losing blood or while still metabolizing the effects of her saliva. But I ordered my muscles to stop their bitching and clung to Lisa as our feet pounded against the concrete. Normally I could have outrun her without any extra effort, particularly since she was barefoot, but tonight she was still all that held me upright. The pursuing footsteps got louder, closer. Black stars danced before my eyes. Ahead of us, I could make out Jeremy's green Honda. Oh God, if we could just make it. 10 feet from the car, a man stepped directly into our path. We came to a screeching halt, and I jerked Lisa's back by her arm. It was him, the guy I had seen across the street, watching me. He was older than us, maybe mid-20s, and as tall as I'd figured, probably 6'6" or 6'7", and under different circumstances, say, when he wasn't holding up our desperate escape, I would have thought he was hot. Shoulder-length brown hair, tied back in a short ponytail, dark brown eyes, a long brown coat, a duster. I thought it was called, but the hotness was irrelevant now. He was only an obstacle keeping Lisa and me away from the car and our freedom. The footsteps behind us slowed, and I knew our pursuers had caught up. Off to the sides, I detected more movement, more people closing in. God! They'd sent almost a dozen guardians to retrieve us. I couldn't believe it. The Queen herself didn't travel with that many. Panicked and not entirely in control of my higher reasoning, I I acted out of instinct. I pressed up to Lisa, keeping her behind me, away from the man who appeared to be the leader. "Leave me alone," I growled. "Don't touch her." Her face was unreadable, but he held out his hands in what was apparently supposed to be some sort of calming gesture. Like I was a rabid animal he was planning to sedate. "I'm not going to." He took a step forward, too close. I attacked him, leaping out in an offensive maneuver I hadn't used in 2 years. But since Lisa and I had run away, the move was stupid, another reaction born of instinct and fear, and it was hopeless. He was a skilled guardian, not a novice who hadn't finished his training. He also wasn't weak and on the verge of passing out. And the man, was he fast? I'd forgotten how fast guardians could be, how they could move and strike like cobras. He knocked me off as though brushing away a fly, and his hand slammed into me and sent me backwards. I didn't think he meant to strike that hard, probably just intended to keep me away. But my lack of coordination interfered with my ability to respond. Unable to catch my footing, I started to fall, heading straight toward the sidewalk at a twisted angle, hip first. It was going to hurt a lot, only it didn't. Just as quickly as he blocked me, the man reached out and caught my arm, keeping me upright. When I'd stayed myself, I noticed he was staring at me, or more precisely at my neck. Still disoriented, I didn't get it right away. Then slowly, my free hand reached up to the side of my throat and lightly touched the wound Lisa had made earlier. When I pulled my fingers back, I saw slick, dark blood on my skin. Embarrassed, I shook my hair so that it fell forward around my face. My hair was thick and long and completely covered my neck. I had grown it out precisely for this reason. The guy's dark eyes lingered on the now covered bite a moment longer, then met mine. I returned his look defiantly and quickly jerked out of his hold. He let me go, though I knew he could have restrained me all night if he wanted it. Fighting was nauseating dizziness. I backed toward Lisa again, bracing myself for another attack. Suddenly, her hand caught hold of mine. "Rose," she said quietly, "don't." Her words had no effect at me at first, but calming thoughts gradually began to settle in my mind. Coming across through the bond, it wasn't exactly compulsion. She wouldn't use that on me, but it was effectual, as was the fact that we were hopelessly outnumbered and outclassed. Even I knew struggling would be pointless. The tension left my body, and I suggested I sagged in defeat. Sensing my resignation, the man slipped forward, turning his attention to Lisa. His face was calm. He swept her a bow and managed to look graceful doing it, which surprised me considering his height. My name is Dmitry Berkov," he said. I could hear a faint Russian accent. "I've come to take you back to St. Vladimir's Academy, Princess." All right. All right. Chapter 2. So interesting, huh? My hatred notwithstanding, I had to admit Dmitri Bell was pretty smart. After they'd started us off to the airport and to and onto the Academy's private jet, he had taken one look at the two of us, whispering, and ordered us separated. "Don't let them talk to each other," he warned the guardian who escorted me to the back of the plane. 5 minutes together and they'll come up with an escape plan. I shot him a haughty look and stormed off down the aisle. Never mind the fact we had been planning escape. As it was, things didn't look good for our heroines rather. Once we were in the air, our odds of escape dropped further. Even supposing a miracle occurred, I did manage to take out all 10 Guardians. We'd sort of have a problem in getting off the plane. I figured they might have parachutes aboard somewhere, but in the unlikely event I'd be able to separate one, there was still that little issue of survival, seeing we'd probably land somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. No, we weren't getting off this plane until it landed in backwoods Montana. I have to think of something that involved getting past the Academy's magical wards and 10 times as many gardens. Yeah, no problem. Although Lisa sat at the front with the Russian guy, her fear sang back to me, pounding inside my head like a hammer. My concern for her cut out into my fury. They couldn't take her back there, not to that place. I wondered if Dmitri might have hesitated, if he could feel what I did, and if he knew what I knew. Probably not. He didn't care. As it was, her emotions grew so strong that for a moment I had a disorienting sensation of sitting in her seat, in her skin even. It happened sometimes, and without much warning. She'd pull me right into her head. Dimitri's tall frame sat beside me, and her hand, gripped a bottle of water. He leaned forward to pick up something, revealing 6 tiny symbols tattooed on the back of his neck. I don't know how to pronounce it. Moninja marks. They look like 2 streaks of jagged lightning crossed in an X symbol, one for each Strigoi he killed. Above them was a twisting line, sort of like a snake, that marked him as a guardian, the promise mark. Blinking, I fought against her and shifted back into my own head with a grimace. I hated when that happened. Feeling Lisa's emotions was one thing, but slipping into her was something we both despised. She saw it as an invasion of privacy, so I usually didn't tell her when it happened. Neither of us could control it. It was another effect of the bond, a bond neither of us fully understood. Legends existed about psychic links between guardians and their moroi, but the stories had never mentioned anything like this. We fumbled through it as best we could. Near the end of the flight, Dmitri walked back to where I sat and traded places with the guardian beside me. I pointedly turned away, staring out the window, absent-mindedly. Several moments' silence passed. Finally, he said, "Were you really going to attack all of us?" I didn't answer. Doing that, protecting her like that, it was very brave. He paused. Stupid, but still brave. Why did you even try it? I glanced over at him, brushing my hair out of my face so I could look him levelly in the eye. Because I'm her guardian. I turned back toward the window. After another quiet moment, he stood up and returned to the front of the jet. When we landed, Lisa had no choice but to let the commandos drive us out to the academy. Our car stopped at the gate, and our driver spoke with guardians who verified we weren't Strigoi, about to go off on a killing spree. After a minute, they let us pass on through the wards and up to the academy itself. It was around sunset, the start of the vampiric day, and the campus lay wrapped in shadows. It probably looked the same, sprawling, Gothic. The moroi Big on tradition, nothing ever changed with them. The school wasn't the old as the ones back in Europe, but had been built in the same style. The buildings boasted elaborate, most church-like architecture, with high peaks and stone carvings, wrought iron gates enclosed small gardens and doorways here and there. After living on a college campus, I had a new appreciation for just how much this place resembled a university more than a typical high school. We were on the secondary campus, which was divided into lower and upper schools. Each was built around a large open with a quadrangle decorated with shown paths and enormous century-old trees. We were going toward the upper school's quad, which had academic buildings on the side, while damper dormitories and the gym sat opposite. Moroi dorms sat on one of the other ends, and opposite them were the administrative buildings that also served the lower school. Younger students lived on the primary campus, farther to the west. Around all the campuses was space, and more space. We were in Montana, after all, miles away from the real city. The air felt cool in my lungs and smelled of pine and wet, decaying leaves. Overgrown forests ringed the perimeters of the academy, and during the day you could see mountains rising up in the distance. As we walked into the main part of the upper school, I broke from my guarding and ran up to Dmitri. "Hey, comrade!" He kept walking and wouldn't look at me. "You want to talk now? Are you taking us to Kirova?" "Headmistress Kirova," he corrected. On the other side of him, Lisa shot me a look that said, "Don't start something." Headmistress, whatever, she's still a self-righteous old... My words faded as the gardens led us through a set of doors straight into the commons. I sighed. Were these people really so cruel? There had to be at least a dozen ways to get to Kirova's office, and they were taking us right through the center of the commons. And it was breakfast time. Novice Gardens dampers like me and Moroi sat together, eating, socializing, faces all right with whatever current gossip held the Academy's attention. When we entered, the loud buzz of conversation stopped instantly. Like someone had flipped a switch, hundreds of sets of eyes swiveled toward us. I returned the stares of my former classmates with a lazy grin, trying to get a sense as to whether things had changed. Nope, didn't seem like it. Camille Conta still looked like the prim, perfectly groomed bitch I remembered, still self-appointed leader of the Academy Royal Moroi cliques. Off to the side, Lisa's gawky near cousin Natalie watched with wide eyes and innocent, naive as before. Watch out for Natalie. She's more than she seems. And on the other side, the room, well, that was interesting. Aaron, poor Aaron, who no doubt had his heart broken when Lisa left. He still looked as cute as ever, maybe more so now, with those same golden looks and that complement hers so well. His eyes followed her every move. Yes, definitely not over her. It was sad, really, because Lisa had never really been all that into him. I think she'd gone out with him simply because it seemed like the expected thing to do. But what I found most interesting was that Aaron had apparently found a way to pass the time without her. Beside him, holding his hand, was a Moroi girl who looked about 11 but had to be older, unless he'd become a pedophile during our absence, with plump little cheeks and blonde ringlets. She looked like a porcelain doll, a very pissed off and evil porcelain doll. She gripped his hand tightly and shot Lisa a look of such burning hatred that it stunned me. What the hell was that all about? She was no one I knew, just a jealous girlfriend, I guessed. I'd piss I'd be pissed too if my guy was watching someone else like that. Our walk of shame mercifully ended, though our new setting, Headmistress Kirova's office, didn't really improve things. The old hag looked exactly like I remembered, sharp-nosed and gray-haired. She was tall and slim, like most Moroi, and had always reminded me of a vulture. I knew her well because I'd spent a lot of time in her office. Most of our escorts left us once Lisa and I were seated, and I felt a little less like a prisoner. Only Alberta, the captain of the school's guardians, and Dmitri stayed. They took up positions along the wall, looking stoic and terrifying just as their job description required. Kurova fixed her angry eyes on us and opened her mouth to begin what would no doubt be a major bitch session. A deep, gentle voice stopped her. Vasilisa. Startled, I realized there was someone else in the room. I hadn't noticed. Careless for a guardian, even a novice one. With a great deal of effort, Victor Dashlov rose from a corner chair. Prince Victor Dashlov. Lisa sprang up and ran to him, throwing her arms around his frail body. "Uncle," she whispered. She sounded on the verge of tears as she tightened her grip. With a small smile, he gently patted her back. "You have no idea how glad I am to see you safe, Valessa." He looked toward me. "And you too, Rose." I nodded back, trying to hide how shocked I was. He had been sick when we left, but this was horrible. He was Natalie's father, only about 40 or so. He looked twice that age, pale, withered, hands shaking. My heart broke watching him. With all the horrible people in the world, it didn't seem fair that this guy should get a disease that was going to kill him young and ultimately keep him from becoming king. Although not technically her uncle, the Moroi used family terms very loosely, especially the royals. Victor was a close friend of Lisa's family and had gone out of his way to help her after her parents had died. I liked him. He was the first person I was happy to see here. Kurova let him have a few moments and then stiffly drew Lisa back to her seat. Time for the lecture. It was a good one. One of Kurova's best, which was saying something. She was a master of them. I swear that was the only reason she'd gotten into school administration, because I had yet to see any evidence of her actually liking kids. The rant covered the usual topics: responsibility, reckless behavior, self-centeredness, blah. I immediately found myself spacing out, alternatively pondering the logistics of escaping through the window in her office. But when the tirade shifted to me, well, that was when I tuned back in. You, Miss Hathaway, broke the most sacred promise among our kind, the promise of a guardian to protect a Moroi. It is a great trust, a trust that you violate by selfishly taking the princess away from here. The Strigoi would love to finish off the Dragomirs. You nearly enabled them to do it. Rose didn't kidnap me, Lisa spoke before I could, her, her voice and face calm despite her uneasy feelings. I wanted to go. I don't blame her. Miss Kurova tisked at us with both and paced the office, hands folded behind her narrow back. Miss Dragomir, you could have been the one who orchestrated the entire plan for all I know, but it was still her responsibility to make sure you didn't carry it out. If she'd done her duty, she would have notified someone. If she had done her duty, she would have kept you safe. I snapped. I did do my duty, I shouted, jumping up from the chair. Dmitri and Obliger both flinched, both left me alone since I wasn't trying to hit anyone. Yet. I did keep her safe. I kept her safe from none of you. I made a sweeping gesture around the room. Could do it. I took her away to protect her. I did what I had to do. You certainly weren't going to. Through the bond, I felt Lisa trying to send me calming messages, again urging me not to let anger get the best of me. Too late. Kurova stared at me, her face blank. Miss Hathaway, forgive me if I failed to see the logic of how taking her out of a heavily guarded, magically secured environment is protecting her, unless there's something you aren't telling us. I bit my lip. I see. Well then. By my estimation, the only reason you left, aside from the novelty of it, no doubt, was to avoid the consequences of that horrible destructive stunt you pulled just before your disappearance. No, that's not. And that only makes my decision that much easier. As a Moroi, the princess must continue on here at the academy for her own safety. But we have no such obligations to you. You will be sent away as soon as possible. My cockiness dried up. What? Lisa stood up beside me. You can't do that. She's my guardian. She is no such thing, particularly since she isn't even a guardian at all. She's still a novice. But my parents, I know what your parents wanted. God rest their souls, but things have changed. Miss Hathaway is expendable. She doesn't deserve to be guarded, and she will leave. I stared at Kurova, unable to believe what I was hearing. Where are you going to send me? To my mom in Nepal? Did she even know I was gone? Or maybe you'll send me off to my father. Her eyes narrowed at the bite in the last word. When I spoke again, my voice was so cold I barely recognized it. Or maybe you're going to try to send me off to be a blood whore. Try that, and we'll be gone by the end of the day. Miss Hathaway, she hissed. You are out of line. They have a bond. Dimitri's low accent voice broke the heavy tension, and we all turned toward him. I think Kurova had forgotten he was there, but I hadn't. His presence was way too powerful to ignore. He still stood against the wall, looking like some sort of cowboy sentry. In that ridiculous long coat of his, he looked at me, not Lisa. His dark eyes staring straight through me. Rose knows what Valissus is feeling, don't you? I at least had the satisfaction to see Kurova caught off guard as she glanced between us and Dmitri. No, that's impossible. That hasn't happened in centuries. It's obvious, he said. I suspected as soon as I started watching them. Neither Lisa nor I responded, and I averted my eyes from his. That is a gift, murmured Victor from his corner. A rare and wonderful thing. The best guardians always had that bond, added Dmitri. In the stories. Kurova outrage returned. Stories that are centuries old. she exclaimed. Surely you aren't suggesting we let her stay at the academy after everything she's done? He shrugged. She might be wild and disrespectful, but if she has potential. Wild and disrespectful, I interrupted. Who the hell are you, anyway? Outsourced help? Guardian Belkov is the princess's guardian now, said Kurova. Her sanctioned guardian. You got cheap foreign labor to protect Lisa? That was pretty mean of me to say, particularly since most Moroi and their guardians were of Russian or Romanian descent. But the comment seemed clever at the time than it really was. And it wasn't like I was one to talk. I might have been raised in the U.S., but my parents were foreign born. My damper mother was Scottish, red-haired, with ridiculous accent, and I'd been told by my Moroi dad was Turkish. The genetic combination had given me a skin the same color as the inside of an almond, along with that what I liked to think was a semi-exotic desert princess features, big dark eyes, hair so deep that it usually looked black. I wouldn't have minded inerting the red hair, but we take what we get. Kurova threw her hands up in exasperation and turned to him. You see, completely undisciplined, all the psychic bonds and very raw potential in the world can't make up for that. A guardian without discipline is worse than no guardian. So teach her discipline. Class has just started. Put her back in and get her training again. Impossible. She'll still be hopelessly behind her peers. No, I won't, I argued. No one listened to me. Then give her extra training sessions, he said. They continued on a while. The rest of us watched the exchange like it was a ping-pong game. My pride was still hurt over the ease with which Dmitri had tricked us. But it occurred to me that he might very well keep me here with Lisa. Better to stay at this hellhole than without her. Through our bond, I could feel her trickle of hope. Who's going to put in the extra time? Demanded Kurova. You? Dmitri's argument came to an abrupt stop. Well, that's not what Kurova crossed her arms with satisfaction. Yes, that's what I thought. Clearly at a loss, he frowned. His eyes flicked toward Lisa and me, and I wondered what he saw. Two pathetic girls looking at him with big, pleading eyes. Our two runaways who had broken out of a high-security school and swiped half of Lisa's inheritance. Yes, he said finally, I can mentor Rose. I'll give her extra sessions along with her normal ones. And then what? Retorted Kurova angrily. She goes unpunished? Find some other way to punish her, answered Dmitri. Guardian numbers have gone down too much to risk losing another, a girl in particular. His unspoken words made me shudder, reminding me of my earlier statement about blood whores. Few damper girls became guardians anymore. Victor suddenly spoke up from his corner. I'm inclined to agree with Guardian Belkov. Sending Rose away would be a shame, a waste of talent. Miss Kurova stared out her window. It was completely black outside with Academy nocturnal schedule. Morning and afternoon were relative terms. That, and they kept the windows tinted to block out excess light. When she turned back around, Lisa met her eyes. Please, Miss Kurova, let Rose stay. Oh, Lisa, I thought, be careful. Using compulsion on another Moroi was dangerous, particularly in front of witnesses. But Lisa was only using a tiny bit. We need all the help we could get. Fortunately, no one seemed to realize what was happening. I don't even know if the compulsion made a difference, but finally Kurova sighed. If Miss Hathaway stays, here's how it will be. She turned to me. Your continued enrollment at St. Vladimir's is strictly probationary. Step out of line once, you're gone. You will attend all classes and required trainings for novices your age. You will also train with Guardian Belkov in every spare moment you have, before and after classes. Other than that, you are banned from all school activities except meals, and you will stay in your dorm. Fail to comply with any of this, and you will be sent away. I gave a harsh laugh. Banned from all social activities? Are you trying to keep us apart? I nodded toward Lisa, afraid we'll run away again. I'm taking precautions. As I am sure you recall, you were never properly punished for destroying school property. You have a lot to make up for. Her thin lips tightened into a straight line. You are being offered a very generous deal. I suggest you don't let your attitude endanger it. I started to say it wasn't generous at all, but then I caught Dimitri's gaze. It was hard to read. He might be telling me to. He believed in me. He might have been telling me I was an idiot to keep fighting Miss Kurova. I didn't know. Looking away from him for a second time during the meeting, I stared at the floor, conscious of Lisa beside me and her own encouragement, burning in our bond. At long last, I exhaled and glanced back up at the headmistress. Fine. I accept. And that is where we'll stop. So we start off with chapter 1 and 2. Okay. So tomorrow we will begin chapter 3. And just a little self-promotion time. If you like YA horror mystery adventures with vampires, yes, vampires, then you may like Vampire Juice. Amanda and Sean stumble upon a mysterious can of juice while searching for Halloween costumes at a local store. Despite being kicked out by the sales clerk, they become obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the strange drink. With the help from some local bullies, they sneak back into the store through a crypt in the graveyard, only to find themselves in the midst of a spine-chilling adventure. So thanks for watching, and we will continue reading Vampire Academy tomorrow.